Pulunaka, and welcome to For the Record. Tonight's discussion is about people's increasing reliance on social media as a source of information and news. Social media is widely popular and easily available on laptops and smart devices. But as we'll find out tonight, sites like Facebook and Twitter aren't always a reliable source of news. My guests tonight are the General Secretary of the Fijian Media Association, Stanley Simpson, the Chief Executive of Fiji Broadcasting Corporation, Ria Syed Kayum, and the Manager Training at Fiji Sun newspaper, Nemani Ndalaimbatiki. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I'll begin with you, Stanley. Social media, as I mentioned, has sort of become the main source, especially among the younger generation, of news. How does that impact the media industry or the traditional media industry?
Thank you, Edwin. It's quite strange for me to be on the other side, but it's a fascinating topic because it's something, it's the way the world is right now. I'd like to just take us back a bit to see how we got here since the 2006 takeover. You know, straight after that, the appearance of blogs that came on, Intelligentsia, Ku4.5, a range of others that started to come up with their versions of news leaks. They had few that were correct. Majority of it was incorrect, propaganda, nasty personal attacks against various people that they didn't agree with, that they opposed. A lot of it was anonymous. 95% was anonymous attacks on people. So that went on for a while, and that was, if you recall, a lot of people followed that, and it was, the rumor mills just kept feeding it about what was happening in government, and it was a reaction to the events that took place at the time. And then the Facebook activity started to spike in Fiji, say around 2009, 10, 11. And then people started to get their news on Facebook, and more, the people that were involved in those blog sites started to participate and get on Facebook. And then it really hit its height, I think, before the 2014 elections, where you saw some candidates, some independent candidates, really using the social media platform to push their case, push their agenda, push their policies. What happened there, you saw that the likes, they might have 10,000 likes, but not translate into actual votes on the day. So it's persisted from there, and now you see most of the political discussion now, I would say, in Fiji is happening on Facebook.
On social media? On
social media. And it's unfiltered. A lot of the people involved in the very stringent attacks are fake accounts. But some real, but a lot of it's fake accounts. And there's now this, we've reached the stage where we've got to look at the impact.
There's a tussle between traditional media trying to stick by their ethos and the journalistic principles and saying what you're reading on social media, what people are saying on social media may be accurate, may not be accurate, but it does not follow journalistic integrity. Nemani, what is your take on that?
Well, let's face it, everything you read on social media is not all true. I mean, some have some truth in it, some are complete fabrication and lies. So our role as the mainstream media is to make sure that we check or we verify this information, because there are lots of information out there, and we set standards to make sure that none of this stuff, especially the ones that are not true, go through, because some of them are pretty damaging. They damage people, their reputation, and most of them don't have any basis at all. There are no facts. They are just assumptions, and people. I know they've got agendas. Most people, they go on social media, they've got their own agendas, and that's something that mainstream media has to watch out for. We are there to be able to project an image where where we are putting out news or information that is factual. And so it's a constant battle. It's a constant thing every day that we've got to watch out for. And so, we see what's trending on social media. And we to a certain extent, we rely on what's happening on social media to see what people are talking about out there.
There is a flip side, though, because FBC has, to an extent, embraced the power of social media to spread its message and to ensure that the news content gets to as many people as possible. But it's a bit of a thin line, isn't it?
Look, of course, like everything in life, there's certain things that can be used for good, and the same things can be used for a bad purpose as well. We believe, as a news organization, that social media is a good tool. It can be used for good, for social activities, to market ourselves, in our case, to reach out to friends, family, to communicate. Our newsroom has social media pages for journalists, etc. But at the same time, it can be used for bad. I mean, it's like we call it out in an analogy. If you have a car, you can use it for your pleasure, you can use it to transport people and do good things with it, but the same car can be used as a getaway vehicle for a crime. That does not make the car bad. So social media is not a bad thing. We don't think it's a bad thing. But if it's used for purposes that is designed to harm people or to cause strife or to spread rumors or to defame people, etc., then it becomes a problem. And the problem is what Nemani just said. Yes, of course, as mainstream media, we have to be careful about how we use this. But what happens to social media per se, even if the media doesn't use it, it is a means and forms of communication to the wider society, and it is increasingly so. And human beings, being who we are, unfortunately, our human nature dictates that we generally tend to believe whatever is written. If something is written in a book, we believe it, right? And with the mainstream media, if something is written in the papers, we tend to believe it because we know they're professionals who have done their research, who have got the background of the story. They're professionals. They've checked and balanced the whole story and presented it to the public for public opinion. But with social media, there's no checks and balances. And that's where the problem arises.
Okay, and on that note, we've unfortunately come to the end of this segment. We will take a short break. We'll be back shortly. Good evening, welcome back. Our discussion tonight, traditional media versus social media, the responsibilities, the risks and the dangers. Look, as we sit here and talk tonight, we, including myself, represent traditional media. Viewers at home or users of Facebook would say, this discussion is because we feel threatened by social media and how it has overtaken the mainstream media as a source of information. Stanley.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of the reaction, a lot of the activity that's taking place on Facebook is a reaction against mainstream media. What is perceived as the bias or the agenda setting. I mean, we can say, oh, the people who are posting and making political comments on Facebook, they're pushing that agenda and not factual. They are making the same accusations at mainstream media, that this media organization is for this people and this media organization is for this. They push this agenda, so we have to push our own agenda. And that's the battle that's happening now between what you call traditional media, and which has been the main source of information for people for decades, and this new media where people are, in some way, they're feeling empowered to come out and say what they want. So they want to push their own narrative, their own agenda. They try to correct things that they say, oh, that those people are pushing the wrong line. This is what actually should be said. So I think the challenge, and the thing about it where people are enjoying is the interactiveness of social media. You can hit back straight away. You don't have to wait for the next day or the next 6 p.m. bulletin for you to have your say, or you have your representative have your say. You're saying it straight away. So you look at some of the political activists on both sides of the political divide, or on the various sides. They're on there, the ones that are not the fake accounts, and there are those who are frightened to say what they really want to say, and they come up with their fake accounts. But generally, so that's the challenge, and I think it's going to be here to stay. It's just, I think, one important thing to do is for people to be educated and be informed about how they should view news. And then they should understand that the credibility of mainstream media is that they must come up being balanced, being accurate, being fair, and one, we're held into account by the laws that govern this country. I'm not sure that exists yet for social media.
Yes?
Well, it's good that you are referring to the laws. You see, according to we have defamatory laws in the country, and this is where the problem arises. And you were talking about people being able to hit back almost immediately, but hit back how? And by saying what? It's on social media. It's free reign. So while
it's free for all.
It's free for all. It's free reign. It's while traditional media. If we take the Wasaya Basha example, something that was said on Wasaya Basha, which was not correct. It shouldn't have been done, and we took immediate action. We have checks and balances in place. We issued apologies. We took action. Now the same thing, or the same type of context of comments are made, and even worse, are made on social media on a daily basis. There's defamatory comments, there's religious vilification, there's comments to encourage civil disobedience, discord, there's comments to remove the government and cause chaos in the country. There was one comment I was reading, shown to me by my PA, calling Minister Dawaki a dumbo, imbecile, moron. Racial slurs, accusations of corruption against the Prime Minister, the President, racial slurs against the President of our country, saying that the Chief Justice and the Judiciary are corrupt and that they're thieves, etc., etc. There's no recourse for that. So anyone can say anything they want, whether it be under a false profile or real people who think they can say these things and get away with it because there aren't any laws governing this. So, and the irony is, when you try and stop them, these same people will say, hey, hang on a minute, it's freedom of expression.
Yeah. Yeah.
But freedom of expression is not absolute. You cannot have absolute freedom of expression. And the case in point, the great example is, say, for example, again, Wasaya Basha. There was something said on Wasaya Basha which shouldn't have been allowed in the first place. It shouldn't have gone out to air. And there were checks and balances, so we had to go back and make corrections to the effect. But demonstrating, while we did that freedom of expression is not absolute. You've got to have certain responsibilities that come with it. Now the same people, if you tell them that they have to have responsibilities on their freedom of expression, they will say, no, our freedom of expression is absolute. And this is where I think not only Fiji, but throughout the world, as this phenomena called social media is developing, we will see, I think, more laws come into effect, possibly in Fiji too in the very near future, where there is going to be some semblance of change in laws or development of laws to address these sorts of situations where you can't just say anything about anyone and cause strife and defamation.
In China, what did they do in China? They actually blocked Facebook, and then they started their own.
But they have their own version of
their
it.
own version of it.
But that's heavily regulated.
Yeah, it's heavily regulated. But do we want that here? If we introduce it here, then of course you've got the advocates of the freedom of expression. They'd be jumping up and down and complaining about it. So where do we draw the line? I think this is the major issue that needs to be discussed, because this is a real problem, and a lot of people, have been hurt, through social media. Riaz has spoken about it. Vilification. Personal people personally attacked without any basis at all through social media. I was just thinking about court cases. When the court rules that there should be, the identity of the accused should be kept confidential. What happens? Social media goes out and broadcasts the name of the accused. So these are the things that need to be looked at. So I think the challenge here is, how do we control this? Or maybe the wrong word is control. How do we regulate this? Maybe again, that might not be the
balance. Keep the balance.
That's the thing. Without intruding on personal liberties.
Yeah, I think it's
personal freedom.
extremely difficult to regulate. Unless
Well, I don't think. I mean, as a user of social media myself, I would not agree with any attempts to regulate. But I do understand the need to balance the use of social media. The question then arises: whose job is it to make this happen, and how do we make
Well,
it
it's the
happen?
laws of the country. I mean, look, laws have to be developed, and it's the development of laws in any country is an ongoing issue. So laws have to develop, just like the crimes decree. You know, I don't know if you know this, but the crimes decree has been developed in the recent past to deal with computer-related crimes. It has been updated. The same needs to be done for the Defamation Act. See, at the moment, for the last 48 years, there's been no significant changes to the Defamation Act. So I think this arises from really the crux of the issue about social media. I think everyone agrees that it's a great thing to keep in touch, to communicate, to post pictures, and you've been a victim of that as well, right? So, and other staff at FBC and people that I know and people and my staff who I'm very worried about, because some of them come in and say, look, this has been written about me in social media because I'm associated with FBC. One staff came to us recently and said, look, someone made a mention of FBC and a mention of me, and I feel strange about working here. And we had to sort of counsel him and tell him it was all right. But it's if we have to develop laws to give some sort of comfort and to people who may be harmed through social media. So we have to take into account the development of social media and issues regarding it to give it a statutory legal base, so that we know that you can't just with impunity go and say anything about anyone and expect no one's going to do anything to you. How could you? What is the world going to develop into if we allow this to happen? Because if you get away with one lie, then you're going to perpetuate another lie, and the lie gets on bigger, keeps on getting bigger and bigger. And you know, it's lies perpetuated by liars in the hope that they, you know, I call it the Nazi Hitler-like policy of repeating lies over and over again, because you're hoping that in the end it'll succeed in making more and more people believe in your lies.
Talking about the Defamation Act and sort of reforming our laws, that would apply after the fact. How about creating a culture or an understanding that social media isn't always reliable? How do we do that, Stanley?
Well, for me, it's very important too that we focus on the empowerment part, about empowering people to, you know, they have a voice now on their Facebook profile. I always try and tell my journalists or colleagues, keep your social media, and keep your
I think the key word there is social.
Social, yeah. But of course, if people want to use it for political, they're free to do so. They're empowered to do so. And I think that's the balance that we've got to try to. I mean, there's many positive things about social media, Facebook, Twitter, and the others, that should not be overlooked. The Washia Basha, for instance, the first time people saw about it was people mentioning it on Facebook. Hey, what's going on here? Why is this being said? Of course, then they added their nasty words, you know, which spoiled from what they're trying to say. What I'm saying is, a lot of people are taking their grievances, their complaints, on Facebook, and I've had this recently on one of these pages that I'm at, where they were complaining. They were saying that there was this problem that existed. With students in high school, they're saying was turning into prostitution, and then it was put on. This person said that they saw it, and then it was put on Facebook. But I asked the question: why didn't you report that first to the police before putting it on Facebook? Sure, you're free to put it on Facebook, but please don't forget that there are appropriate traditional measures that's put together by the state for you to address issues. What's happening now is people are throwing a lot of issues as they come up. They feel outraged. They feel
before anybody attempts to do anything about the problem, they post about it.
And that's the
Facebook.
difference with traditional media. Is you have to verify this before you put it to the public.
Well, checks and
Well,
balances.
that's the point I want to get into next, but that'll have to wait because we have to take another break. We'll be back shortly. Well, Winaka, welcome back to For the Record. We're talking about the challenges of social media versus traditional media. Riaz, Stanley made the point that a lot of these people are turning to social media, mainly Facebook, in instances where they feel that there is a vacuum of general discussion, mostly on the political front. Do you believe that's an accurate statement, that there is a lack of discussion or people don't have a forum to go to?
No, I mean, this is a forum. The news is a forum, and look, you can't deny the existence of social media. It is there. We have to live with it. And people discussing issues is fine. And people have been discussing issues for a long time. It's been happening around grog bowls. It's been happening at family parties. But now we've got a different platform where people can hold discussions with so-called friends on a Facebook page or on Twitter or something. But the crux of the issue is, what can you discuss in the public forum? It's now a public forum. It's not just relegated to 4 or 5 people around a grog bowl. It's the whole world now. It's the whole country. I'll give you an example. If I create a poster of you and say, Edwin Nunn is a thief, and I stick it on the bus stop outside FBC, and I say, Edwin Nunn is a thief by Riaz, you can take me to court. Mm-hmm. And take court proceedings against me for defamation, I think. But if I did that on social media, at the moment it's all up in the air. You can't really do that. And the people, some of these people who are doing these sorts of things, and they're doing it with everyone. It's not just political entities and individuals, but groups and everyday members of the public. And you can't just do it and think you can get away with it. There has to be some laws governing it. And that's where I'm coming from. Social media is there. Yes, you can use it. It's there as a platform. You can discuss things. But do not cast aspersions and make accusations against anyone. And a lot of the times it's false. And expect to get away with it. Because there has to eventually be laws that are put into place to address that.
Yes, I asked the question. What about people that set up fake accounts?
Well, that's
how do you deal with it?
Yeah, that's another issue altogether, because that's I suppose the beauty of social media. Because if you didn't want to be known, you wouldn't.
Well, the idea there is to, for Facebook users, you always do background check on someone who's posting something to verify, are they a real person, are they a real profile or not? Huh?
Well, I think what you're referring to is that the general public has to learn to become more discerning.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, human beings.
What's the danger? What's the danger? Apart from the challenges to traditional media, what is the danger to the general populace if this goes unchecked?
Well, we've been focused the last few sessions on the politics, but it's more than politics. There's Facebook bullying. I mean, there's attacks against young girls on Facebook that you see almost every day, on other people, on people that someone don't like, on couples who've broken up. It gets very nasty. There's some sites there where they'll put up a post about someone, and they're not a political person, and the attacks by some people, you get scared about the kind of people that are living in this country by the comments that are put in here. They're going unchecked. So that's a serious danger. It's beyond politics. It's about the society as a whole here.
I hear relationships have been affected because of what's being posted on social media, and I think this is one of the challenges that we will have to face and we'll have to deal with. I think one of the ways of dealing with this, and I think we've got to make a start somewhere. I think we've got to educate our people. We can't just leave it to them to work it out on their own. We need to discuss this like we're doing now. We need to talk about it. Excuse me. We need to have more public discourse on this, because if not, then it's going to go berserk. We need to. There was one time where, the old adage, think before you act. Now is think before you upload. Think before you tweet. I think it's important because some of our young people are very naive. And not only young people, but old people too. We're very naive. We go into social media and we think everything we read there is true.
If it's on Facebook, it must be true.
Well, if it's written, it's true. Mm-hmm. You see, that's the issue. that's why I'm saying we have to be a lot more discerning as members of the public. Don't believe everything that you read, because it most likely be false, especially, like you said, if it's under false profile.
Yeah. I was in Australia recently, and I got asked this question about the Minister for Lands, you know, and I did in one of my say, but I got a shock. I actually got a shock. I was sitting at a dinner table, and you know, at the Gold Coast, and I got asked this question out of all places. You know, this is not even Sydney, but this is at the Gold Coast, and I thought, oh, yeah. And I got asked this political question. You know, he said, how come Fayaz Koya is the Minister for Lands? And I said, well, what's the problem there? And you know, and then they say, oh, he's Indo-Fijian and he's Muslim and all that and all that. And I said, hey, what's the problem there? And the perception, and this is what they got from social media. The perception was that he was in charge of all the land in Fiji, which is not true, right? And the truth is only 4% of the total land mass in Fiji is owned by the state, right? But somebody had peddled this rumor, a lie, and put it on social media. And people who picked it up thought it was true. And so this thing spread like wildfire. So I mean, that's just one example.
It's a very good example of the dangers of social media and just blindly believing anything and everything you see on social media. But there are more dynamics involved here based on the age of consumers of information, their financial backgrounds, their cultural backgrounds, and that's something that I'd like to get into, but that's going to have to wait until the next segment. It's time to take a break. We'll be back shortly. Pulunaka, and welcome back to the show. Before the break, I mentioned the dynamics of the consumers of news. One of the issues that's emerging now is that a lot of young people have grown up with Facebook. They are quite adept at using smartphones. They have their own accounts, and to them, growing up, because we as a group come from a generation where our traditional or main source of news was the radio, the newspapers, and television, which applies media code of ethics and principles. We are now living at a time where generations are growing up feeding off Facebook and Twitter and what have you. How does that affect the future generations, if I can be general about the question, Riaz?
Well, look, this is where the role of parents come in. You know, we have to be very discerning again in what we allow our children to do and how we allow them to use certain tools that are available to them now that were not available to us when we were growing up. So I just like to point out, you said, you know, what dangers are there? The dangers are, I mean, you look at the Arab Spring. It was basically, it's thought of to have started off because by using the tool of social media. We've had instances where I pointed out recently where individuals, true profiles of individuals on Facebook and some pages have called for rebellion, revolt, even called for the murder and assassination of Fijian government officials, including our Prime Minister. And my worry is this, that if these sorts of thoughts and feelings are expressed over and over again, we are too small a country to ignore this. I mean, we are very vulnerable. If you are able to rebel rouse and get people on your side and feed them wrong information and then ask them to do something that is against the law, to go out and rebel rouse and cause chaos in the country, or even to murder and kill and all the rest of it, then again, there has to be some sort of responsibility, and that's how dangerous this thing is. Not social media. Social media is not dangerous. It's how you use social media, and the way to govern the use of social media is through appropriate laws. I think that's what's important.
Are we, because of the proliferation of information via social media, are we coming to a stage where people will not be able to to discern, not have the ability to filter information based on what is factual and balanced and accurate?
Can I say? I think yes. Even the mainstream media is falling for that. I mean, we were talking about mainstream media, how we have to be discerning about what information is correct or not. A New Zealand international media organization recently used tweets allegedly made by the Prime Minister of our country, saying he had said this, and did a story about it, and basically, it painted the whole picture of the Prime Minister, saying something that was offensive and wrong. It turned out that the tweet was not from a real Twitter account.
It was
the
a
Prime
fake
Minister's.
account.
And so, international media organization from New Zealand fell for that lie. So, yes, we can't afford not to be discerning.
But
journalists are also using social media. I mean, here in Fiji, social media, Facebook's posts are often a source. At one time, we would hear about a death in the British Army, sadly, first on Facebook, then from official sources, and then we would follow it up. So it's a source of information. There are good debates that take place on social media. But one worrying trend is that the voice of reason, the voices to the center, the reasonable people often get swamped by the more extreme elements. That's the worrying trend. But I do follow some debates. I do engage in some debates every now and then on Sevens Rugby or Donald Trump or something on Facebook with friends or colleagues. Yeah, I do debate Michael Field every now and then, and colleagues as well. But I've always, as I said, it's very important. You follow the U.S. elections.
Yeah.
Almost all the U.S. media were on Twitter. And some were making comments I found surprising, as we come from a culture that's a bit more, you give both sides of the story, whereas they were a bit more opinionated, that side. So that's the key issue that, if we can embrace that, empower people to have that kind of proper debate without the nastiness, that
the slurs and the
slurs
personal
and
attack
the personal
and
attacks
swearing.
and misogyny or all those bad connotations that
A lot
come
of
from-
racism,
and
too.
racism,
Huge
and all
amounts
that.
of racism.
So you find that people do. I mean, it's not left unchecked. You find that good people do come in, says, "Hey, this is wrong. This is," but the worrying trend is if they get drowned out.
And it's always the voices on the extremes which are the loudest,
Yeah.
Nemani.
Yeah, I think going back to what something that Riaz alluded to, I think we need to teach our people. We need to start with our young people, our children, because they are the ones who are going to be hit. Because we are in the middle of a communication revolution, and this thing will go on, right? And a lot of new things are going to come up. I mean, we are just beginning to discover all these things that we are talking about here tonight, and more things are going to surface. The legal challenges. How are we going to deal with this? I mean, Riaz has asked the question, but I'm waiting for the day when the law, comes that will effectively deal with this, and I'm looking at which, where will it come? Because some of the challenges that we have now, we are not even facing this challenge. It's right around the whole world, right? I mean, China has taken the extreme step, right? They've closed Facebook and then they've come up with their own version of Facebook. But we don't want to go down that road, do we? But still, having said that, we still need to come up with some form of regulation to ensure that we can.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Sorry, Naman, I'm not sure about regulation. For me, the key thing here is holding people accountable for what they say.
Well,
For me, that's the key issue.
which will need
Well, look, I mean, let me
development
pose
of laws to govern that.
Well, I wonder if the current laws
me pose
do.
this
Does,
question.
No, it has to be enhanced.
Yeah.
The current laws don't address that. This is what we're
Can
talking
we
about.
apply the same laws that we apply, the principles that we apply to mainstream media, should those be applied to users of Facebook?
I think we should.
Well,
I
I
just don't think that it's been tested. I think there probably is a test case.
Should we apply?
No, look, ideally it should, But I think to manage that will be extremely difficult. These are individual people in the individual homes. How are you going to go to people and say,
no one's
don't do
tested
this and don't do that?
No one's tested this yet. No one has tried to use the current laws to hold someone accountable.
No.
I think there is a test case going on.
There is a test
right
case
now.
right at this moment where a certain individual who could be regarded as a personality / socialite had certain things written about her on social media by a real person.
That's still before the courts,
that's before
yes.
the court. And the results of that case will be very interesting because that should give us some sort of a precedence for our laws to be developed in, like I said, in regards to the changes to the Defamation Act to give it a statutory legal base.
That is defamation, personal attack against a certain individual. I'm talking about the proliferation of information, how people can write stories, can take their narrative and push it to millions of people without applying the same principles that the media does. Should that be applicable on social media as well? On personal, private citizens, not practitioners.
ideal situation, it would be
whatever
nice.
applies. I think it should cover every citizen. No one is above the law, really. I mean, if the law is applied, it should be applied to everyone, irrespective of whether you are a private citizen or.
And that takes us back to the point that Stanley made earlier, that these people have turned to social media because they feel they don't have a voice.
Yeah, well, you said whether it's applicable or not. That doesn't matter. Technology now allows people
To have a voice.
to have a voice and to reach as many people as they want. I mean,
But the issue over here is not about having a voice.
Yeah.
The issue is about having a voice and then saying things that are not true. Whether it be personal defamation laws or pertaining to that, or making some false claims about a country, an organization, a religious group, an individual, or anyone for that matter.
yeah, the dangers that it'll cause to society. As I said, this is a society issue. Let's look at it. Where are people getting their news today? You know, before we would wake up, we'd run to the shop,
They're all watching NBC TV.
get and they're complaining about it on social media.
We'll come to that shortly.
Yeah.
We'll come to
So
that shortly.
you get the papers, you have a cup of tea, you read it. But now most people are waking up and they picking up their phone.
They're going on social
They're
media.
going on social media. Most times, I would wager that they are there, and whatever's coming through, they're now following the people they want to hear. That
They're
pertains to their
following the
point of
narrative
view.
that appeals to
For,
them.
for instance, in the U.S. elections, you know, Donald Trump basically ignored the mainstream media, took to his Twitter, which is 15 million followers, and bypassed the whole and then just tweeted. And he had these people who had their own sites, and they would be followed so that they get the news that is sympathetic to Donald Trump. They don't want to hear anything that's against him.
Yeah, was it the real news though? I mean, that's the
That's,
question.
that's,
Yeah.
that's- I suppose that's the
was
crux
it the
of
truth?
what we've
Was
been
it
talking
was it
about.
honest? Was it did it have checks and balances? You know.
All right, we have to take a break now. We'll be back shortly. Good evening. We're just about to wrap up, but we still have our guests with us. Our discussion tonight: traditional media versus social media. A lot of the groups that exist on social media champion themselves as the voice of those without a voice. They see themselves as critics of the government, not because of their personal agenda or what may be. Some do, and they openly admit it, but others use the pretense or the explanation that, look, we have to do this because there is no voice of reason in the traditional media. Is that true, Stanley?
Yeah, that's in some ways, you know, people are saying things that they feel that are not being said, or things they believe that are not being put out there. This is the dynamics that's taking place right now, and the traditional media also need to look at it. And traditional media will play a huge role in checking what's going on social media to ensure.
It's not the traditional media's role to police information.
No, but it's to check that it's not going in the wrong direction.
But then the journalists would spend 24 hours a day going from page to page, from group to group. Nemani, Riaz?
Well, I beg to differ. I think what Stanley is referring to is a piece of information. Say, for example, something's happening in the harbour, there's been an oil spill, someone puts it on social media, oil spill. The traditional media hasn't reached it yet because they're still getting on a boat, but someone happens to be there in the harbour already, they've done it, it's gone viral. that's fine because that's based on a fact. There is an oil spill, there's a photo, but when you start putting on claims and pushing a claim that, oh, this and this has been done, or this person or the government has done this, or this person has done that, and making tall claims about it, then there's the problem. So how do you, again...
Well, is it the responsibility of the media to,
Well, they have to set
keep
themselves
shooting down?
apart as the voice of reason, of accuracy and balance in all of this. So that's the very important role. And that's why I've been telling, as the Fijian Media Association, I've always been telling the journalists, please, watch what you say. Because I've seen plenty of journalists put their personal views and make personal attacks against politicians in this country on Facebook. And that hurts me because, to me, that affects their ability to be credible and to be relied on to give the fact. Because eventually,
They've
people
taken
will come back
sides.
to traditional media to check that what they've seen on social media was indeed the truth.
Sure.
I endorse what Stanley said. In the Fiji side, we see what's trending in the social media. And I want to make that point again. Social media is important, right? It's part of the way we live today. And we can't totally ignore it. So that's what we do. We monitor what's happening in the social media. We see what's trending. And then we see what is in the public interest. There are so many things that are in there that are not really in that domain, in the public interest domain. They are more personal, between two people or between two organizations. But really, as far as the public's concerned, it doesn't really matter. But this is something that we need. And the other thing that Stanley raised was, especially about journalists. And that's true. There are journalists commenting about, personally on issues that, against politicians and people, forgetting that they are, sometimes the face and the voice of the media they represent. And so people take that as an indication so when they write something, they won't believe it because they've already expressed their opinion in the social media. But this is the challenge that we face in the mainstream media. We need to to verify the information that is in the social media. Like I said before, not everything in the social media is true.
Last question to all of you, very quickly. Is it the job of the media to disprove every rumor out there based on the principle, long-held principle, that you do not report on rumors in the first place?
Well,
is it the job of the media to disprove rumors?
Well, it's not our job to disprove rumors. What I want to say is this, that we look at issues that are matters of public interest. If they fall within that domain, then of course we're interested. We want the people to know what's happening. And sometimes you get a little sniff of an indication of something that is happening through social media. And so you pick it up from there, and then you try and verify it and develop it.
Yes, disproving misinformation.
If you hear of something on social media, and our newsroom uses it all the time, you guys do, if you hear of something, then our job as mainstream media with responsibilities is to verify if that story is true or not, and if it's true, then how do we develop that story and bring it to the public. And that is our job, to verify and to see if it's in the public interest, to verify it and then present it. Social media does not have that responsibility. They will say whatever they want to say. And that's dangerous.
Disproving misinformation.
Well, when I was news director here at FBC, Riaz and I had some big arguments about the reporting of rumors and how we should handle it. And when debates, it was constructive debates, about how we handle it at a time when the country is filled with rumors. Do you take a rumor and make it a bigger story, or you don't? But on whose responsibility? Look, I think the media is important in this, the traditional media in leading the charge, but really it's everyone's responsibility. You've always got to be mindful of what you're seeing, and there's a lot of decent people out there in the country.
I think there's some interesting days ahead in terms of not only for Fiji but for the whole world as to how social media is going to be approached and handled in regards to misinformation.
All right, with that, gentlemen, thank you very much for being on the show. That's all the time we have tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was For the Record for this evening. Remember, if you have any comments or questions, you can email us for the record at fbc.com.fj. That's it from me for tonight, but Nemani will be joining you again very shortly with the My Say segment. I'll see you next Sunday. Good night.
Good evening. I'm Nemani Njalaimbatiki of the Fiji Sun. Welcome to Fiji's only TV editorial show. In My Say this week, I will speak more on social media, a topic we just covered in the earlier segment of the For the Record. I want to start My Say tonight by saying that social media is here to stay. It's a convenient forum where people can interact, share ideas and feelings. At the same time, concern has grown to worry about the standard of stuff that is shared or exchanged on social media. Some people think social media gives them the open license to say whatever they want, irrespective of the consequences. The sad thing about all this, is that no one can do anything about it. At the moment, anything goes. There is no legal, moral, or ethical standard. Personal attacks on individuals in a bid to defame or cast aspersions on people's characters keeps growing because the perpetrators know they can get away with it. The culprits either live here and operate from a fake Facebook account, or they reside overseas where they feel untouchable and the long arm of the law cannot reach them. One recent case was when someone had created a fake Twitter account using the Prime Minister's name and sent a derogatory remark against another prominent person. Unfortunately, it was picked up by an overseas media and used in a news item. Then we have a few who reside overseas, mostly anti-government propagandists, who are engaged in a regular dose of diatribe, spewing their venom on people, organizations and religions. Whatever fits into their political agenda. Their scant regard for human decency, dignity and the sanctity of life is a cause for alarm and concern. They incite communal antagonism, stir up religious contentions, and foment revolt and seditious activities. How do we rein them in and hold them accountable to the law? All these utterances breach the law. It is time that we apply the law and see what happens. There is a case before the court on this issue right now. Hopefully the outcome will set a precedent for future actions on this subject. For those who live overseas and take pot shots at people here, they should be held accountable one way or the other. We should use our diplomatic connections to get these people to answer for their actions. This is the big challenge we now face about social media. How do we regulate it to ensure that we cut out all the garbage and engage in civil and constructive discussions on important issues in public discourses? The words control and regulate usually attract the wrath of civil libertarians and advocates of political correctness. They quickly refer to it as a threat to free speech and expression. Freedom of expression comes with responsibility. There is no such a thing as absolute freedom. If that wasn't true, there will be no law. We will be free to say and do whatever we want and be prepared to face the consequences from those we have wronged or offended. It will be back to jungle law, where the fittest survive. As legal experts look for a solution, I would like to make it clear that I'm not trying to demonize social media. It is an important tool for communication and doing business today. It is crucial that we know how to use it for positive outcomes. Prior to the advent of internet, the adage was think before you act. Now it is think before you upload or think before you tweet. One of the defenses we have is to educate our children on the proper use of internet or social media. Things that are posted online can stay in the system for a very long time. Children should be taught the dangers of social media if it is not handled properly. They should also learn its advantages. Their internet activities should also be monitored and supervised to ensure they don't stray into areas they are not supposed to go to. Abuse of social media can lead to risks of cyberbullying, intrusion of privacy, distraction from meaningful relationships, and distractions in social situations. At the moment, we cannot control what others say, but we can control what we say. And if more of us are doing it, it's a major step forward. This is Neman Indelembatiki, and that was my say tonight. For more of my views, you can read the Fiji Sun.